domestic terrorists, as you said to the
My
country.
condolences to their families, because I know that their lives will never be the same after that happens.
Is that an apology for what you said?
We, in those incidents, offer as much information as we can from officers and agents on the ground in a chaotic scene that gets...
Just hours after 2 Americans were killed by ICE agents, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem publicly labeled them domestic terrorists. But in a dramatic House hearing, Congressman Jamie Raskin repeatedly challenged her to provide evidence, or simply admit she got it wrong. What followed was a tense exchange that raised difficult questions about accountability, due process, and the power of public officials to shape the narrative before investigations are complete.
The ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're fighting for American citizens, Madam Secretary,
Today
because your ICE agents shot them in the face and killed them, and each person you see up on this dais today represents 800,000 American citizens. And you should know that as a former member of Congress. Now, her brother said that Renee Good was someone who could make you believe things were going to be okay despite all the hardship because she chose optimism. Alex Pretti was a Boy Scout, a choir member, an outdoorsman from Green Bay who lavished attention on his beloved dog, Jewel. His sister called her brother someone who had a way of lighting up every room that he walked into. But only a few hours after they were gunned down by your agents, you called Renee a domestic terrorist. You said Alex committed an act of domestic terrorism. Alex's parents responded to your calling their son a domestic terrorist. They said, the sickening lies told about our son by the administration are reprehensible and disgusting. Now, I want to give you a chance before the entire country to correct your false and defamatory claim. Based on what you know today, Madam Secretary, were Renee Good and Alex Pretti domestic terrorists?
Congressman, what happened in Minnesota in those 2 incidents was an absolute tragedy.
Were they domestic terrorists, as you said to the country?
My condolences to their families, because I know that their lives will never be the same after that happens.
Is that an apology for what you said?
We, in those incidents, offer as much information as we can from officers and agents on the ground in a chaotic scene that gets...
I'll repeat my question, reclaiming my time. Based on what you know today, Madam Secretary, based on what you know today, were Renee Good and Alex Pretti domestic terrorists?
As you know, there's ongoing investigations that are being led by the FBI.
Oh, but you didn't wait for the investigation, did you? You didn't wait for the evidence. You proclaimed that they were domestic terrorists at the time. Why did you do that?
And you didn't wait to attack our law enforcement.
Why did you do that?
We're going into a dangerous situation.
Why did you call them domestic terrorists?
Is our ICE officers and our HSI officers that day risked their lives to protect that scene, so evidence could be reclaimed, so it could be used in the investigation. Because those violent rioters that were there...
So you're proud of the fact that you called them domestic terrorists? Is that what you're telling America?
HSI officers put their lives on the line to protect that scene, so evidence so we could have...
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. But you told a lie about them. You said that they were domestic terrorists. Do you regret that?
I offer my condolences to those families. And again,
based on what you know today, were Renee Good and Alex Pretti domestic terrorists?
There's ongoing investigations, and so I
So you still don't know? You think that's an open question?
I would think you would want there to still be investigations going into these situations.
Well, you stated the conclusion 2 hours after they were killed that they were domestic terrorists. I wanted to give you an opportunity to correct the record, not just for their family, but for everybody in America who believes in the truth and fairness and honesty.
In every situation, as facts come out, we relay
You know, your acting ICE director, Todd Lyons, came before Congress. He said he had no knowledge whatsoever that Alex Pretti and Renee Good were domestic terrorists. None. This is your guy. He said that. He admitted that that was wrong. Why won't you admit it?
I'll tell you the investigation's still ongoing, and we'll...
So do you regret speaking before the investigation?
I would say that in those situations...
You regret that?
...chaotic scene on the ground, we relay information to the American people that they're asking for. And as things change, situations change...
People were asking you whether they were domestic terrorists? And you decided that they were before the investigation?
As we learn more, we...
You don't want to say anything to their families?
I did. I said condolences.
For what? How about an apology for what you said about their loved ones?
My heart is with them, and we will continue to stand with them as they get a complete investigation into these situations.
All right. Well, Let me ask you some questions of law if you can't handle the facts. Very simple questions of law, not trick questions. Is it lawful for federal agents to shoot and kill a person for engaging in peaceful protest and nothing else? That's a yes or no question.
Each instances in peaceful protest, no, it's not.
Okay,
But I would
good.
say
Is it lawful for federal agents to shoot and kill a person for filming them on a public street? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. Is it lawful for federal agents to shoot and kill a person just because that person is lawfully carrying a holstered firearm under the Second Amendment in state law?
No.
And finally, yes or no, is it lawful for federal agents to shoot an innocent person or even a criminal suspect just for driving away from them, according to the Supreme Court?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you got the law right, and I hope you would rethink what you said about two good, honest, faithful American citizens and what that means to their families when you say that as Secretary of Homeland Security. And your ICE guy has already retracted that, and you should retract it too. I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back to gentleman from.
Instead of giving a direct yes or no answer, Secretary Noem repeatedly expressed sympathy for the families while emphasizing that investigations remain ongoing. She defended the actions of law enforcement officers responding to what she described as a dangerous and chaotic scene but declined to retract her earlier public statements. That distinction became the heart of the exchange. Raskin argued that if the investigation is still ongoing today, then there was no basis to publicly declare the victims domestic terrorists only hours after the shooting occurred. From his perspective, government officials have an obligation to wait for verified evidence before making accusations that could permanently damage reputations. He pressed the issue several times. Did she regret making those statements? Would she apologize? Would she acknowledge that the investigation had not yet established the facts? Each time, Noem returned to the same position. Investigations continue, information changes as facts emerge, and she was relying on reports from officers at the scene. The disagreement wasn't simply about one phrase. It reflected two very different views of how government should communicate after controversial uses of force. One view prioritizes quickly informing the public based on preliminary reports from law enforcement. The other argues that officials must avoid drawing conclusions before investigators complete their work because premature statements can unfairly prejudice both victims and the public. Raskin strengthened his argument by pointing out that ICE Acting Director Todd Lyons had reportedly testified he had no knowledge that either Renee Good or Alex Pretti were domestic terrorists. To Raskin, that suggested senior officials within the same department were no longer supporting the original claim. Perhaps the most revealing portion of the hearing came during Raskin's rapid series of legal questions. He asked Secretary Noem whether federal officers may lawfully shoot someone solely for peacefully protesting. She answered no. He asked whether officers may shoot someone simply for filming law enforcement in public. Again, she answered no. He asked whether legally carrying a holstered firearm justifies deadly force. Again, no. Finally, he asked whether merely driving away from officers justifies deadly force under Supreme Court precedent. Once more, Noem answered no. Those answers were important because they established broad legal principles that both sides appeared to accept. Raskin then argued that, if those principles are true, public officials should be especially careful before assigning labels like domestic terrorist before all the evidence has been reviewed. The hearing also reflected Congress's constitutional role of oversight. Members of Congress are expected to question executive branch officials, especially after controversial incidents involving federal agencies. These hearings are designed to determine not only what happened but also whether government leaders acted responsibly in communicating with the public. Supporters of Secretary Noem may argue that officials often receive incomplete information during fast-moving events and must balance transparency with rapidly changing facts. They may also contend that officers on the ground deserve public support while investigations unfold. Critics, including Raskin, argue that sympathy alone is not enough when inaccurate public statements may have harmed innocent families. From that perspective, accountability requires correcting the record when new evidence casts doubt on earlier claims. Regardless of where viewers stand politically, one principle remains widely accepted. Government officials carry extraordinary influence. Their public statements can shape reputations, public trust, and confidence in the justice system. That is why accuracy, restraint, and accountability matter so much, especially before investigations have reached their conclusions. In the end, this hearing was about more than one confrontation between a congressman and a cabinet secretary. It was about whether government officials should make definitive public accusations before all the facts are known, and whether they have a responsibility to correct the record when those early statements are challenged. For many watching, that remains the central question left unanswered.